what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. And we are live. Greetings to our loyal WFYL listeners around the world. Welcome back to your Philadelphia live stream, only on the Freedom Station. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in once again, because you still have the right to hear and the right to be heard. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mike G. As always, with me are Philly Chris and Liberty Lee. And you're listening to Mike G in the Morning with The Law Matters. And you can listen to our program every Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. So let's be heard. I want to remind our listeners that you can participate in the free and open exchange of thoughts and ideas throughout the entire week by visiting MikeGinthemorning.com. What's it called, Philly Chris?
MikeGinthemorning.com.
That is correct, sir. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. So tell your friends, tell your family, tell your barber, tell your Uncle Jerry, tell anybody who'll listen to check us out at MikeGinthemorning.com. I also want to remind our listeners about the powerhouse lineup we've got here at the Freedom Station. Kick off your mornings with Scott Adams. Bring you the Scott Adams Show weekdays from 9 a.m. until 11. We've got Dan the Man Bongino. Bring you the Dan Bongino Show weekdays from noon until 3 p.m. We've got the headliner, Ben Shapiro. Bring you the Ben Shapiro Show weekdays from 3 to 5 p.m. And finally, we love having him at the Freedom Station family. We've got Michael Knowles. Bring you the Michael Knowles Show, 5 to 6 p.m. So don't forget to tune in and show him some love. And with that, you know what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. I want to thank our loyal listeners and the Mike G in the Morning family for joining us. We've obviously got some very bad news in this country coming out of Maine. And of course, our hearts go out to the families of those who were injured or lost their lives in the horrific mass shooting that took place. And Philly Chris, I understand that you've got a little bit of information with respect to this. You've followed it a little bit more closely than I have. Would you mind filling us in on some of the details?
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. Yeah, I think things are still developing and we're getting some more information, but I did have a little bit of time before the show to try to take a look at the current situation. And looks like the mass shooting occurred in Lewiston, Maine, Wednesday evening. So, last night, at least 13 people are injured and several reported deceased at this time. I believe it was Robert Card is the name they've reported. I think they're still trying to locate him unless there's been an update on that. So unfortunately, gentleman apparently is former military and has a history of some mental health issues. And for whatever reason, decided to go to a bowling alley and also a bar. I don't know if they're at the same location or different locations. And, shot up a bunch of people, unfortunately. So another situation here with a quote unquote mass shooting. Kind of odd that it happened in Maine. A lot of gun owners up there don't really hear about these types of things happening in that part of the country. But for whatever reason, this individual decided to do what he did. So here we are. Yeah.
This is obviously heartbreaking news. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions from people who are either anti-gun or simply don't know many gun owners in real life is that when we see these things on the news as Second Amendment supporters, that we don't feel bad or we don't feel sad about it.
Mm-hmm.
We see these kinds of things and we're sick to our stomach. Our hearts break for these people and their loved ones. We're no less sad than anybody else. Where we have disagreements is to how to handle this. We all want this stuff to stop. We wish this would never happen ever again. The other side, the anti-gun side, typically offers solutions that would impact people who did nothing wrong, and B, may not solve that problem or
Mhm.
have no impact on that problem. And that's where the disagreement is. I think we're all in agreement that we want this stuff to stop. We disagree on how that goal can be achieved. But to say that gun owners don't care when we see these kinds of things, that's wrong. It's nonsense. It's not true. And they know it's not true. So we got to get that out of the way right now.
Mhm.
But I am curious as to whether people have proposed solutions. And I don't know the information about this. What I do tend to see is that something will happen and people will offer up some kind of a solution. We need this kind of a law. And in reality, that kind of a law that they're proposing wouldn't have impacted the situation that's at hand, right? So if somebody, for example, is not prohibited from possessing firearms and they come out and they say, well, we need universal background checks. Well, if the person's not prohibited, then a universal background check isn't going to stop them from accessing a firearm.
Right.
And when you go further, I don't think people realize the situations in which background checks are already required.
Mhm.
We see a lot of people saying that at a gun show, you can simply purchase a firearm without a background check, period. Well, those gun shows are filled with federal firearms licensees. These are licensed dealers. And when you purchase a firearm from an FFL, whether it's at their own store or at a gun show, under federal law, you must fill out a 4473 and submit to a background check. So they're taking place in that context. I think that in order to have an intelligent discussion about this and get anywhere, we have to all be dealing with facts. When we're having a conversation and one side is throwing out proposed solutions or throwing out even their gripes, their complaints about the system, and they're not based in reality, well, then that's a problem. That's not
Right.
going to be a productive discussion. DG says background checks are like PFA, just a piece of paper. Oh, that's a point that a lot of people bring up, that if somebody is prohibited from possessing firearms, they're not going to fill out a form and submit to a background check. They're going to go through other means to illegally purchase a firearm. The thing with the universal background checks is that the person who's getting access to the firearm who is prohibited, let me be a little bit more clear about this. So there are many circumstances where federal law will require a background check, right? When you purchase from a dealer, whether it's at a gun store or at a gun show, you fill out the 4473, you submit to a background check. All interstate transfers, meaning people who live in two different states, must take place through an FFL. And if the recipient is receiving a handgun, it must take place at an FFL in their home state. So if you're buying a handgun, you can't go across state lines out of state and buy that handgun at an FFL in a different state. That
Mhm.
FFL's got to ship it to an FFL in your home state. You have to go back and get it there. So if you find a good deal out of state, you want to take advantage of that, well, they've still got to ship it to an FFL in your home state. You've got to fill out that 4473, submit to a background check. So that's a circumstance where we've already got background checks. So what is not covered? Well, transfers privately among residents of the same state are not covered under federal law. Now, keep in mind that the federal government requires people who are dealing in the business of transferring firearms to have an FFL. So they've increasingly become more stringent on how that criteria is met. And even the Obama administration said even a handful of purchases, given the totality of the circumstances, could be dealing in the business, engaged in the business, and therefore require a federal firearms license. So if you're somebody who's got a collection and it's a one-off, you want to get rid of your one firearm, purchase a new one, that sort of thing, then you wouldn't think that as being engaged in the business, right? You're
Right.
not in it for profit. But even if you're a private person and they start to see some kind of a pattern, they're going to be taking a look at you. If you're buying a bunch of guns, selling them shortly thereafter, you're making a profit on them, oh, they're going to be taking a look at you. Are you engaging in the business? Another thing is that if you were to go out of state to purchase a long gun, for example, through an FFL, that transfer still got to comply with the laws of your home state. So this whole stuff about people in Illinois are going up to Indiana and they're getting guns, no questions asked, and bringing them back, that's also nonsense.
Right.
And so when they say these kinds of things, either they have no idea what they're talking about or they're being disingenuous to try to further their agenda, which that's obviously not productive. So I want to know from people in the audience, from the Mike G in the Morning family, what solutions do you propose? Keep in mind, states will also have additional laws. So we said that federal law will allow private transfers among people who reside in the same state. Doesn't have to go through an FFL under federal law, but states might have a requirement that they do. So Pennsylvania, for example, your handguns, except for certain exceptions between parent and child, grandparent and grandchild, between spouses, have to go through an FFL or through the sheriff's office, which would require paperwork and a background check. Other states require all of them to go through an FFL, and they have additional requirements. So it's not exactly the Wild West the way many people make it out to be. So my question is, if you do impose universal background checks, is that going to have an impact? Because even under the current state of the law, if you have a person who is prohibited and they're purchasing through means that do not require a background check, that is still an unlawful transfer. They're committing a crime. They call it the gun show loophole, right? They say people will meet up at a gun show and then they'll effectuate a private transfer, but it's really not a loophole. It's simply committing a crime. There's a difference between a loophole and committing a crime, because if that person's prohibited from possessing firearms, they're committing a crime. So let's take this a step further. Suppose there were universal background checks and that transfer would have to take place through an FFL. The person who's already committing a crime, are they going to say, oh, well, I was going to break that one law. I was going to break the law that says I'm not allowed to possess firearms, but I will not break the universal background check law. That I will not do.
Yeah.
I suppose it could make people who are effectuating the transfer, right, the transferor, could potentially be a little more careful under those circumstances. If there's a universal background check, maybe the person's not going to be willing to sell the firearm. But to think that it's all going to vanish, I think, is absurd when you have somebody who's willing to commit a crime in the first place. Right. And that's the problem with adding these additional laws. Well, they won't follow this law, so let's impose this law, and they will follow that law. What do you think, Chris? Do you have any ideas? Are you going to solve the world's problems?
I certainly haven't been able to do that to date. Still trying to figure that out. You know, I suppose when I reflect back on these horrific events, you know, the biggest thing that stands out for me is it's about the individual. It's a mental health crisis. So, and apparently this individual even spent a couple weeks in a mental facility and self-reported, you know, that he was having some issues. So another example of that, you know, even by the individual.
That's interesting. Was it voluntary?
I don't know that it stated in the article I read whether it was voluntary or not. I think it was based on the way the article read, but I don't think it was clear. If it was involuntary, then that might disqualify him, right? Like if he was 302'd, for example, that would disqualify him, correct?
Yeah, involuntarily committed or adjudicated mentally defective is a federal prohibitor, and then states will have their own prohibitors on top of that. The problem that people have with prohibiting folks who seek voluntary treatment is it will discourage people from seeking voluntary treatment.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If
Right.
you know that if you go and seek voluntary mental health treatment, you're going to lose your firearms rights for life.
Mm-hmm.
How many people are going to avoid getting mental health treatment as a result?
Mm-hmm.
That would be a problem, wouldn't it? So do
Yeah.
you want
Plus
that person
99.
to remain treated?
Sure. And plus 99% of people who may even be in need of some sort of assistance or guidance or counseling or whatever the case may be, probably would still never commit such a heinous crime, which it is a crime. So it's already illegal to do these things. I guess the challenge we face in a free society is that unfortunately these things can happen, just like people choose to drink and get behind the wheel or, abuse a family member, or, commit violent acts against other people. Not that it should happen, but unfortunately, it's not something you can completely eliminate. And even if you took away gun rights, we see in other countries where the gun rights are much more restrictive, people still kill each other with guns and, with hammers and other means. Right.
Well, we see that in this country too, right? If you look at
Sure.
FBI statistics,
Hmm.
year over year, the amount of homicides that take place with a rifle involved of any kind, we're not just talking about the AR-15 variety, not the
Hmm.
modern sporting type, are about a quarter of those committed with knives and other sharp objects. It's roughly equivalent to the amount of homicides committed with hands and feet.
Hmm.
And the problem with going after one particular type of firearm or weapon of any kind is that when that's removed from the equation, it's not like the actions that were taking place with those objects will stop. Meaning, the crazy person who wanted to kill people may use a different type of firearm now, right? And then what happens when that becomes the most common firearm used in these types of incidents? If they go after that type of gun, then it keeps going down the chain.
Right.
Because what becomes the most common becomes the target of new potential laws and restrictions. And then something else comes up.
Hmm.
If you have an incredibly popular firearm, something that's commonly used, like the modern sporting rifle, such as the AR-15, it's like having a Ford F-150. It's a very popular vehicle.
Hmm.
And if there are a bunch of accidents that are taking place with that particular vehicle, it's not necessarily that that vehicle is to blame. It's just an
Hmm.
incredibly popular vehicle.
Right.
Let's say that the Ford F-150 was the most crashed vehicle on the road. I'm not saying it is. I'm using it as an example. Ford, don't come after me. This is solely an example. I'm saying suppose that were the case. If you took all of them off the road, well, then what happens, Chris?
Well, it's going to happen in a different vehicle because the
There's going to be a new
individual.
vehicle.
Right.
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 There's going to be a new vehicle
Hmm.
that is involved in the most accidents. And correlation does not necessarily equal causation.
Right.
So that's a unsolvable. If you're going about solving a problem that way, you're never going to reach a resolution.
Hmm.
Some solutions being offered in the comments. DG says the media on the right and left create fear for the story. Maybe send Mike G to all those news outlets. educate and take questions, I'd love to see Mike on The View.
I
I
want to
don't.
see that too.
I don't think The View would like to see Mike on The View. The problem is that it's very difficult to have these conversations when you're rooted in facts.
Mhm.
And what I mean is, of course, the people on the anti-gun side, we catch them spouting misinformation all the time, whether it's intentional by design or accidental. And the problem that I've had with these people when I go on these national town halls is I'll have the president of some prominent anti-gun organization go up there and make a statement that is totally untrue and
Mhm.
contrary to the law. And it leaves me with only two conclusions, right? One of two conclusions. It's either that person has no idea what they're talking about, and this cause that they're devoting their entire life towards, they know nothing about. They haven't done any research on the topic, which I find very difficult to believe, or they're being disingenuous to try to further their agenda, which is horrible. They're both bad.
Right.
They're both bad.
Mhm.
But when they go up there and they say these kinds of things, I had somebody start talking about the internet loophole on one of these town halls. This poor mother lost her kid. Their kid got shot in some kind of gang violence, and said that the guy bought the gun on the internet and had to explain, listen, I'm really sorry about what you went through. That's horrible. I feel terrible for you. Nobody should ever have to go through that. But unfortunately, this idea that people are buying guns on the internet and they're showing up at their front door just isn't true.
Mhm.
In the federal law, when you buy that gun, it goes to an FFL, a dealer, where you go there, you fill out the form, you submit to the background check, just as if you went and picked out a gun from behind their counter. The idea that you're buying guns on the internet and there's this internet loophole simply isn't true.
Right.
And this lady on the panel responded by saying, no, what the internet loophole is you can go on a website like the classifieds
Mhm.
and you can find somebody who will meet up with you and illegally sell you a firearm. I said, that's not a loophole,
Difference
nor is
between
it the internet loophole.
difference between a crime and a loophole.
Well, first of all, it's not a loophole, right? All it
Right.
is you're meeting somebody who will meet you in person to do something criminal.
Right.
Second of all, I don't think it's fair to call it the internet loophole. You're making it seem like people are buying guns on the internet. When you talk about buying something on the internet, if I go and I order something on the internet, do I expect it to show up at my front door in a box? Or do I expect to now have to go meet somebody in an alley somewhere and pick it up from them? That's not buying something on the internet. You might as well call it the back of the newspaper loophole,
Yeah,
right?
it's the
That's
alley
not the
loophole.
internet. And it's not a loophole. It's neither the internet nor the loophole.
Right.
So that's a very disingenuous way to describe it.
Yeah.
Just call your gripes what they are.
Mm. Well, there's a lot of opinions out there as opposed to real facts these days. I mean, it's not even a lot of real news anymore.
Dag Nabbit doesn't have a solution, but he knows what the solution is not. Says,
Mhm.
I don't foresee a solution by making more laws. It's a valid point. So we could narrow this down. We could cross that one off the list.
Yeah.
Dag Nabbit says, evil is out there, and how do we recognize it before it's too late?
Yeah.
That's also true. What do we think about changing our society and our culture in this country? Because that has certainly changed over the last several decades. That has been a major change in this country.
Mhm.
I had a gentleman at a seminar one time, older black gentleman, come over to me. He said, Mike, let me tell you something. I was raised in Louisiana, and when I was in school during hunting season, every single truck in that parking lot had a rifle in it,
Mhm.
and nobody ever shot up the school. He
Right.
said, let me tell you something. If access to firearms were the problem, we would have known about it back then. And I thought he raised an excellent point, because it's never been more difficult to access firearms in this country than it is today. It's not
Mhm.
like the laws were once very restrictive and then they increasingly became more favorable and they opened them up or anything like that. No, it's only become increasingly more restrictive over the years.
Mhm.
So if that hasn't solved the problem, then why do we think that it will now?
Yeah.
If that wasn't the problem back then, if having less restrictive laws didn't pose these problems, then why do we think that continuing to go in this direction will solve the problem? I'm not sure that makes sense logically, does it?
No. No, it doesn't.
DG, I feel like a broken record. Pray for America is the new magnet on my car. Still missing my Mike G in the morning magnet. Prayer is the only solution, and then educate, in my opinion.
What happened to our Mike G in the morning magnet? Somebody take it, or what happened?
I don't know. I thought we sent out a few magnets and keychains.
What happened, DG? Somebody steal it from you?
Thought we got her some magnets and keychains.
Yeah.
Scott checking in.
Hey now.
Hey now, gang. Was out of town, but better late than never. Sure is.
Hey
Glad
now,
to have
hey
you
now.
here.
The Finnish land. Hey now. Hey now.
Dag Nabbit says there are cars being used for mass murder and no one wants to ban cars. That's another interesting point, right? If you think about it in any other context, somebody like what happened in Nice, France, runs a truck through a crowd of people, kills a bunch of them. Everybody says, "Wow, what is wrong with that person? What an evil person." The guy in Wisconsin, I think it was, who ran through that parade,
Mhm.
killed a bunch of people. Man, that's a crazy person. Somebody shows up with a pressure cooker bomb,
Mhm.
blows up a bunch of people. That's a sick, twisted individual. That's an evil person. Somebody does it with a knife, let's say. Wow, what a maniac. That's an evil person. But if somebody shoots somebody, the response is let's take everybody's guns away.
Right. Yeah. That's
Or let's impose restrictions that are impact many people who didn't do anything wrong.
Mhm.
And I don't think that the anti-gun side understands that that's really the crux of the issue with gun owners is they don't want to be punished for something that they didn't do.
Right.
Why should somebody else's actions impact me? I've been a responsible, law abiding gun owner, is what they're thinking. And I've done nothing wrong. So why should I have to be punished for that?
Mhm.
It would be like if you wanted to crack down on drunk drivers and they said, okay, so we're going to make a law that if you drink at all, if you ever have a sip of alcohol, ever,
Right.
you can no longer drive. You have to give up your driver's license
Mhm.
if you want to drink alcohol. So you can either drink or you can drive. But
I think Liberty's trying to get in. I saw in the private chat, just so you know, Mike.
okay, Liberty's in. So you can drink
Hey
or you
now.
can drive, and that's it.
Well, we
Well,
saw how prohibition worked out too.
that's true. That's
Mhm.
true. But I think the response from people would be, but that's not fair because I drink responsibly. And my answer would be exactly. That's exactly what gun owners are feeling under these
Right.
circumstances. That if they're responsible, why should they be punished when they've done nothing wrong?
Mhm.
Seems to
And
be.
they have a different attitude when it's something that does affect them. I think it's sometimes easy for anti-gun people to throw around these types of restrictions because if they don't own guns, they don't want to own guns, they never want to own guns, then
Mhm.
what do they care if everybody else has to
Sure.
deal with these
Yeah.
restrictions when they've done nothing wrong? Go ahead, Liberty.
I was just going to say we should treat it like any other mental health situation where we look at what the issue is and then treat that issue or look into that. So if he's a veteran who had some kind of PTSD or had some kind of problem, let's backtrack from there rather than, going straight for guessing what it is, like to actually like meet each problem as it is. Like drunk drivers, we're going to go look at the alcohol, right? Let's look at if he's a veteran, like what happened in his history, and it might not just be PTSD that he's a veteran. It could be that he had some other issue
Mhm.
going on. It could be a personal thing with a wife, a girlfriend. I mean, we don't know. But then let's look at that issue. Let's look at domestics. Let's look at the mental health diagnoses. Let's look at those things. Let's be smart about it.
Right.
That's a good point. So liberty solves the problem. We can end the show.
Hey now.
Everybody, you can go home.
Yeah.
Jeremy has a comment, says all these anti-gun people and politicians are infuriating. This immediately led to Gavin Newsom calling for a constitutional amendment. You can't even contemplate what's going on before the vultures come in. That's true. We see this repeatedly. I don't think a constitutional amendment is happening anytime in the near future. He can call for it all he wants. That might rally his base. Who knows? He may be eyeing a presidential run at some point. But I don't think that's anywhere in the foreseeable future in this country.
Yeah.
The Finnish land says he got the Mike G Rolex. Thank you.
Hey, I'm still waiting for mine, Mike. Where's mine at?
Oh, I was going to say, Chris, did you send him a Mike G Rolex? I got some news for you. It ain't real.
I did send it. It's a fake, but we'll let him think.
Stacks Farm said, check it in. Give him a hey now.
Hey now, Stacks. Hey now.
Hey now. Dag Nammit piping back in with another part of the solution. I think these individuals who are mentally ill see murder as a way to become popular and well known. That is a different avenue we can go down with this conversation, because one thing that has changed objectively since the 1960s, the 1970s, right? We're talking about that older gentleman who made that comment to me. What is around today and extremely prominent that was not around in the 60s, 70s, or even 80s or 90s, Chris?
I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit. Say that again, Mike. What was the question?
We're thinking about objective differences between today's day and age and back in the 60s, 70s, the generation of this gentleman who made that comment to me at the seminar. But even in the 80s and 90s, what is around today and extremely prominent and seen by every child, adolescent, young adult today that was not around back then?
The internet?
Well, the internet, but at least let's even go a step further to a particular aspect of the internet.
Fake news?
If you had a child today, I know that your children are older, but if you had a child today in high school, what's one of the biggest problems that they deal with among their peers? You get people getting in trouble.
Bullying and peer pressure, stuff like that.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
But how does it happen today as opposed to how it happened back then? Back then, it might be you deal face to face, you go home.
Sure.
That's the end of that. What do
the
you
online
today?
stuff? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Social media.
Right. Social media. Right.
Social media. So Dag Nabbit brings up this point. They want a way to become popular and well known, go down in history for what they've done through social media, through the news networks.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to
are often
internet famous.
Reporting their names, showing their faces, and everything like that. Liberty, do you have any theories about this? Does it have anything to do with social media?
I think 100% like social media is involved, because even just the average mentally well person, or even just something little going on, goes on the internet and gets you all riled up and angry. And as the Bible says, angry is the same as murder. I mean, what leads to murder? Anger, right? So if you're going to go on there and scroll all day and have your head filled with angry stuff on Twitter and the news and constantly seeing the negatives, and it's just going to fill your mind. And if you're younger, you don't, or I mean, this guy was 40, but maybe he wasn't well developed, you never know. It definitely feeds into it. And also, overall society, not that, divorce leads to this all the time, but a lot of kids with a school teacher I know would write letters and things about their parents divorcing, and just the way that it's so accepted in society. And a lot of kids are holding in anger and looking for outlets, and it's just so accepted. Oh, we're the Partridge Family or whatever, and they don't get to express their feelings, so they're expressing their feelings online and being fed different things. So, and also TikTok. I mean, I scrolled sometimes and saw things that I was like, geez, a little kid would see this. It's scary. So there's so many different aspects, and that's why my point is it's an individual basis. And if you go to the individual and you see a bigger problem, then you work your way back. So if you go to him and we see it was a veteran issue, let's look at helping veterans with mental issues. It's something with his family, then let's look at divorce, let's look at relational issues. But you can't, the other side of it is you can't fix everybody. And that's just something like somebody said, it's evil in society. It's a fallen world, and there are going to be some bad individuals out there.
Yeah.
It looks like in the comments, everybody in the Mike G in the Morning family, the loyal listeners, were getting the answer correct before you did, Philly Chris.
Yeah, they were. Yeah,
Agnav the Fitness Land saying social media, but DG's got another couple of responses that are fair. All right, DG says drugs. I think that there's a certain type of drugs that we're seeing more frequently among our youth today, prescribed medication, even, right?
Absolutely.
Because people were definitely on drugs in the 60s, 70s, 80s, right?
Possibly even more than now, maybe.
Yeah, different kinds of drugs.
Yeah, maybe the right ones. I don't know.
Prescription drugs are probably more readily available, though, right?
Yeah, and a lot of these, antidepressant drugs and other things they prescribed have the side effect of suicide and homicidal thoughts. So
Jeremy said
maybe there's an element to that here with this guy. We just don't know.
Yeah, and Jeremy said this particular person checked into a mental facility for hearing voices. Now, come on, like that's the other part of the problem is if there are a lot of these trends that we've seen, a lot of the trends of the last shootings is that there were literal signs, and they literally ignored it. So they'll call on people, CYS cases and things like that. They'll call on people who are not doing anything wrong, but yet these things that are blatant in front of them, they miss it. Right?
Jeremy says he was in the 304th Infantry. The Army came out and said he wasn't trained as a firearms instructor, as the media had been lying about.
That's interesting. But again, this is the problem that the news. I mean, you could talk to almost anybody now, and who trusts the news, whether it's Fox or CNN or any other major news organization. There's been so much false information, misleading information, fake news, propaganda, however you want to categorize it, or what your personal view is on what it actually is and what motivates it. But there's so much wrong information being provided on such a large scale.
Stack says psychotropic meds, large majority of the shooters are on them. And that's what I was referring to with the more readily prescribed medications that we see. Rita brings up a point, says some violent video games can desensitize some people to violence as well. That's, what's interesting about that, Rita? I don't play video games myself. I'll give you an example of how I don't play video games. I was talking to Jose Morales about this one time, or he asked a question, do you play video games? Was his question to me. I suppose he does. He said, do you play video games? I said, what do you mean, like Nintendo? And he said, well, no, because it's not 1991, but okay, I think I know my answer.
Right. You gave yourself away.
So it's not my particular cup of tea, but Russ, the producer, who's not with us this evening,
he's playing video games right now.
He's playing video games and eating Hot Pockets right now. He couldn't make it. He's got important stuff to do. But he's very much into video games, and I'm pretty sure a lot of the video games he plays are violent. And what's interesting about it, Rita, is that you'll have people who are into the violent video games and not at all into firearms. And when the government tries to restrict the violent video games, they'll have the same sorts of complaints that gun owners will have. Because I had this conversation with Russ on the air once, probably 4 years ago at this point, because somebody mentioned something about the video games. It might have been somebody who called in, and Russ piped in. He said, listen, I'm an adult. I was like, first of all, that's debatable. But he said, I'm an adult. He said, I'm an adult, and I enjoy these video games, and I've never gone out and shot up the mall. I've never harmed anybody. I have no intention to harm anybody. So why should I be impacted and not be allowed to play these video games based upon something that somebody else did wrong? And I said, that's pretty incredible, because it's almost exactly the argument that many gun owners have, or the complaint that many gun owners have. Randy says, absolutely, Rita. Everyone should read the book Assassination Generation by Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman. I will recommend anything by Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman. Excellent author. Good Christian man. Stack says, is Russ Cartman all grown up? Very close. Very close.
That's like the comment of the night right there.
Divinus Land says, Russ won't even fight Mike. That's true. I've tried to do it for many years.
Yeah.
I've tried to set it up, and I even offered to donate all the money to charity, and apparently he does not like charity.
You have to give him like a month's worth supply of Hot Pockets, although that would probably empty your retirement account. But
I'll put just about anything on the line. That would be a lot of fun.
You got to make it happen.
Be a lot of fun.
Live stream it.
I'm just going to start calling out people at work and stuff for that. If I have a dispute with an opposing counsel or prosecutor, hey, let's fight for charity. Why not?
Hey, throw it out there.
Let's fight for charity. If you don't do it, then you don't love the children. We'll donate all the money to the children's hospital. If you don't fight, that means that you don't care about the children's hospital.
Think of the children.
I'm going to start throwing that out there.
Totally should.
I should start setting up the details so that I have it all set up. Hey, we have a venue. We have everything in order. All you have to do is say yes, sign on the dotted line.
Just schedule it.
We'll sell tickets.
Yeah.
Or maybe I could fight a colleague or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and then there could be a pool, like a backup person if, Russ doesn't show or whatever.
Hannity has shown himself fighting and training. Hannity has shown himself training on his program.
I think you sent me that. Yeah, you sent me a copy of that.
Yeah, so Hannity showed himself training on an episode where Dana White was on his program, the president of the UFC. So apparently, Sean Hannity has trained in the martial arts. I would be more than happy to go 5 rounds if it were for charity with Sean Hannity.
Let's reach out.
We would like to do something like that for charity. It'd be entertaining, and it would be good for the children.
Hey, whatever's good for the
maybe
children.
He's somebody who's willing, given this seems to be of interest to him.
And if it helps, for the children, I'll even do what Definisland just suggested, and I'll be the ring girl.
You be the ring girl. You really take one for the team. We're going to twist your arm about it, right?
Whatever it takes.
And don't. Definisland, did he tell you about that? Did he tell you, hey, just write in and say this so I got an excuse? If you dare me, then I got to do it.
Hey, now.
Jeremy says, I think that should be the rule in Congress. Everybody get in there. Stack says, think of the children.
Think of the children.
So, Mr. Hannity, if you're listening, we really need to help the children.
I would pay for that.
We got another fight coming up this weekend. Tyson Fury is fighting Francis Ngannou. Francis is the former UFC heavyweight champion. He's going to be boxing Tyson Fury, one of the all-time greats. Jeremy Miller says, good suggestion. If Gavin Newsom wants to ban assault rifles, he should have to go to Congress and fight Morgan Luttrell. Why do people always look at that like it's a bad thing, though? They say,
what's that?
Why do you want to fight? Why do you always bring up fighting and everything?
Oh, right. Yeah, well, everybody's afraid of that now. People can't be physical, especially. It's really toxic masculinity, Mike.
I have spoken to some other attorneys before, and the way they talk, I just say, you know what you have is I have never been punched in the face syndrome. That's what you have.
Right. That's right.
Because you'd be a little more respectful to people if somebody would have punched you in the face before.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think it does build character. Growing up, you get into a few fights. The problem is that, everything's out of control today. We're talking about shootings and things like that, right?
I've been kicked in the
People
face.
do some pretty horrible things. It used to be 2 people would go out and they would fight and then pick each other up and give each other a hug, and they'd be friends.
Yeah.
Now they go back, they get their friends, they come back, do horrible things. People
Yeah.
get killed.
That could be a
What's
good
changed?
shirt.
Is that a cultural thing though? Is that
Uh,
something that's changed in the fabric of our society?
Maybe it's a generational thing. It has changed quite a bit. I mean, I remember growing up in the 70s and 80s, like, my parents might have even gave me too long of a leash. I'd be out for days sometimes on my dirt bike or at my buddy's house or out in the middle of the woods, without a phone, and nobody knew where we were. And, we used to chase each other around with BB guns for goodness sakes, which probably wasn't a great idea, but we did it, and we literally would shoot at each other. I mean, we were minors and children. It probably wasn't the best idea, but we were sort of careful about it, I suppose. And kids were fighting, but nowadays, you don't really see as much of that. And then when kids get in those situations, it becomes, I think, more of a legal issue too. And bullying's no good. I've been bullied, but I'm talking about, things that are outside of that spectrum, I guess.
DG says that Dr. Spock psychologist ruined how people should parent. I don't know. I've heard of the name. I don't know much about what he taught.
Yeah, I don't know about that either. I don't know too much. You're not talking
I
about
know
Star
I hear people say today crazy things like, "Oh, you need to talk to your child like they're an adult and ask them respectfully to do X, Y, and Z." It's like,
Yeah. No, discipline
I
has
don't know
changed a
about
lot.
all that.
Yeah. I mean, I was never into hitting my kids. I kind of had a rule that the only time I would ever do that, and I probably only ever did it a couple of times, minor times, was if they were, seriously about to hurt someone else or hurt themselves, or, running into traffic, you might grab them, or if they're beating somebody else up or somebody's doing something to them. And as a camp counselor, I think I mentioned to you, we had a conversation about this recently, working in a Y summer camp there up in New England in the 80s. We had very specific protocols about that. You'd never, ever put your hand on a child unless there was like some sort of physical altercation. You were, breaking up and then, basically detaining them temporarily, so they wouldn't cause physical bodily injury, harm, or whatever else, in the moment. That was about
DG
it.
says most of the time it's parents, the government micromanaging parents, kids given too many options was a lot of his theory.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot of
That
options.
sounds
Yeah.
about right.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds about right. So, what do we think from the folks in the audience? Is it good to have been in a fight? Is that something that's changed? Right? Is it good to have been in a fight? Does it build character? Do we need more fights? And will that kind of tone down the rest of this stuff? There's actually a YouTube channel. I think it's called Street Beefs. And they've
okay.
got a cage set up in the backyard, and guys go in there and fight instead of everybody shooting each other.
Hey,
DG says absolutely. Jeremy says absolutely. I want to hear from everybody. Do you think that we would be in better shape as a society if people would just throw hands more? Maybe that's the answer. We get more facilities where people can go and settle their arguments through physical combat in a structured setting.
It's an interesting point. I mean, we are still animals at the end of the day, and there's a certain physicality and anger and even aggression and other things that come along with being human. Actually thinking back to like the 80s, breakdancing was an interesting way for the inner city youth to kind of battle it out without shooting each other or knifing each other. So that was sort of a more positive outlet for them to settle their beefs.
So
I
here's what
suppose.
we're going to do. I'm going to open up a facility where people can come in and throw hands and settle their differences, and you're going to set up a breakdancing facility.
Yeah.
You'll be in charge of the breakdancing facility.
Hey, not a problem, man. I used to
Is-
go to New York back in the 80s. I wish I could break dance.
I could just picture Chris spinning around on the top of his head on a piece of linoleum, right?
Just
Do
need
you
some
remember those?
cardboard.
They would show up with some linoleum and they'd have the spray.
Absolutely.
spin
Some of those kids
around
were
on
good. I hung out with a kid. He's
Oh,
like
yeah.
doctor now, a young African-American kid in New York, Joey. And I used to go, he actually turned me on to rap. I was pretty into rap in the early 80s because I used to go listen to WBLS broadcasted of the Empire State Building in New York, and got into some of that music. I thought it was pretty good. The old rap, some of it's pretty decent, but he was actually pretty talented with that stuff. He's into Michael Jackson and the whole breakdancing scene, but it's pretty physical. Those guys, they're real dancers,
Yeah.
So
It takes a lot of coordination, flexibility,
right.
agility, conditioning, right?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to see a fat, sweaty, out of breath breakdancer.
This is true. There's actually some guys in Manhattan. I saw them a few months ago when I was visiting a good friend in Manhattan, and they were doing, like breakdance routine right in Times Square, and they got a pretty huge following on YouTube. And those guys are jacked. I mean, they're in wicked good shape. They're doing all kinds of crazy stuff with their bodies. So something to be said for that. It's like street gymnastics,
DG says one big factor, lack of good old Christian role models, especially men. Certainly true.
Yeah.
Prayer in schools has changed.
Yeah, well,
since back then, right?
Effectively removed in most cases from a lot of institutions. Yeah.
So we got to get prayer back in schools. We have to get more Christian male role models. We need to have facilities for mutual combat and breakdance facilities.
Sounds like a plan, man. Incorporate it all into one big place, called it, the breakdancing beatdown church or whatever.
I did show you that clip of Step Up 3D, right?
Refresh my memory. I'm not sure.
I think we were sitting there. Well, when I was in college, I would come home for a few weeks at a time, and to make a few bucks, I'd go down to Manhattan and be an extra in movies or TV shows.
Yeah, you just showed that to me a few weeks ago. I know what you're talking about now. Yeah, that was great. And you guys started the whole chant, right? You got lines.
Yeah.
So
if anybody's seen these movies, they had my number and my brother's number because we would sign up for these things to get calls when they needed extras so we could make a few bucks. And we get this call, we need young males for a fight scene, is the way they described it to us. And I remember I had just shaved and I was thinking in my head, oh man, I shouldn't have shaved. This would have looked way better.
Look a little
all right, we'll be there. So we show up and we're dressed like we're ready to fight, and we get there and it's Step Up 3D. It's a dance off, but they wanted like the fight scene type atmosphere.
Right. That is pretty funny.
And people were asking me if I was there for like the wrong movie. I'm like, you're on the wrong set. But that's basically the premise of the movie, is they have like these breakdance fights where one side goes and the other side goes, and then they pick a winner at the end of it. That's how they settle their differences.
Yeah. Well, society needs some sort of outlet, I suppose. And
that was funny, the story that you mentioned, though, because at some point we found out that the team, the good guys, were called the Pirates, was their name.
Right.
And so there was the part of the scene where the referee comes in, or the judge, I guess he was, and announces that the Pirates won the dance off. And everybody was supposed to go nuts and cheer and everything like that. So me and my brother decided we were going to start this chant, Pirates, Pirates. And so everybody starts cheering. We started getting it going, and then the people around us joined in, and then next the whole entire building's joined in the Pirates chant. And if you watch the movie, the scene ends with that Pirates chant. I remember the director was standing there looking around like, what is going on? Because we weren't told, nobody's told to do that.
You were ad-libbing, man.
It erupted so organically. I can't claim that I've ever seen the movie. I watched that scene just to see how it turned out.
We gotta watch the movie.
I have not seen that movie. I don't think I've seen any movie or TV show that I was actually in.
No kidding.
Full. I don't think I've seen any one of them in full.
Huh.
There's only a handful of them, like Date Night with Steve Carell. I actually made it into the trailer on that one.
Nice.
I don't know if I ever showed you that, but
I don't think so. No, I gotta do that now.
And then there was another one, The Sorcerer's Apprentice, with Nicolas Cage. Showed up there in like a time period costume, and they had me pretending to hammer a piece of wood for like 10 hours in a row. That was fun. But the way to make a few bucks when you couldn't have when you're an athlete, you really can't have a consistent job, because that is your job in college, is to do that and go to school. And nobody's going to hire you when you can't work there's a ton of hours where you're not available.
Yeah.
And So if you could find something that's like gig work where, hey, every so often I could show up and make a few bucks doing that, well, that's what
It's
you
pretty
end up
cool
doing.
though. It's a fun thing to do. Yeah.
I think the problem with the facility where you settle your differences by hand-to-hand combat is there's just a ton of liability involved, right? Like, how do you get
Yeah.
insurance for that?
That's
You
a
gotta
really
have,
good point. That's
even
probably
if you have
part of
airtight
it.
waivers, somebody's gonna sue you eventually.
Yeah.
I mean, people are such wimps. Wouldn't it be so much better if you could just trust that nobody's gonna sue you over that? It's like, hey,
Right.
okay, we're agreeing to fight. If you win, I'm not going to sue you. Wouldn't it be so much better if you could take somebody at their word for that?
I mean, what's the point of even signing these waivers anymore? You know, but
That's
you
true.
hear about that all the time.
Yeah. It becomes increasingly difficult. When I
Hmm.
was doing that area of law more frequently, what I would do is I'd go through all the recent cases that
Mm.
involved a waiver not holding up and try to figure out, okay, the court said this was the problem with that waiver. How do we solve that problem for our waiver?
Oh, okay. Okay. It's
And
interesting.
did the court hint towards what maybe would have cut it in this situation? How do
Right.
we get that in for ours? How do we fix the error that they made in this case, learn from other people's mistakes? That's how I always went about it. Find out who got whacked and why.
Hmm. Good idea. Yeah. Well, it can come down to a single word or
Urso
the.
says, "Hey now, Patriots, YouTube trying to block me from viewing because I have ad blockers set up on my system. Arr, that's not good. We
Not
can't
good
be
at
without
all.
Durso.
Yeah, that's not cool.
It's good to see Durso. Maybe Durso's got the answer to solving the world's problems."
Probably does.
Jeremy
Yeah.
says our local high school was sued for kneeling in silence before a football game.
Oh my.
Now, kneeling in silence, is that for prayer? It's not during the national anthem, but for prayer.
I
I suppose
believe
that's what that means, right?
more for prayer, I
They
suppose.
wouldn't be sued for kneeling during the national anthem.
Okay, no, they support that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
Wow.
support
So
that.
we've got Stack says violence was prevalent when I was young. I did and still understand that it was always possible. Keeps you on your toes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Dag nabbit. Long story short, I had a bully picking on me in school. On my way to gym class, I backhanded him and went on my way. He flunked that year and was in my class the following year. We became friends. That's pretty cool.
You do hear those stories, yeah. You kind of
That's pretty cool.
sometimes get a certain level of respect for each other. Yeah.
Hmm. I
Yeah.
thought he was gonna have a worse ending to that. If there's just I
Good.
backhanded him, and he had to miss several months of school because I put him in a coma, and then he failed, and then he ended up waking up, and because he was left behind and so far behind, he ended up killing himself, and
Right.
then
Right. Yeah. Much better ending than that one.
or he dropped out of school and became homeless. That was a good ending. They became friends. Have you
Yeah.
ever had that happen where you got into a fight with somebody and then you became friends?
Yeah, there was a kid in junior high, and him and I sort of had some issues, and he actually dared me to show up at his house after school one day, and I did. I showed up. I don't think he thought I was going to show up, and I stood at the end of his driveway. He was
Mm.
out there like putting cleats on, trying to intimidate
The
me, and I
fight?
just yeah, he had like a bat and cleats, and he was like hitting it, and I'm just standing there like I was so angry. I was like, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. So I didn't go on his property because I thought it'd be better if I waited in the street, but
And what
kind of
happened?
I stared him down, and then he finally just went in the house.
Hmm.
But then after that, he was more respectful, I guess. So
He
we
went inside
sort of
with the cleats and the baseball bat,
yeah,
and
he
your
just
mom
walked
was
back
like,
in the
"Take
house
those
with
things off in here." His mom dragged him out and beat the hell out of him,
yeah,
and that
right.
was your plan the whole time. You're
Yeah.
gonna make him go inside with cleats, so mom beats him up.
It's probably good he didn't come down to the end of the driveway. I don't know what would have happened, but I was at the end of my road with him. So, but one of my earlier
Oh,
moments standing up for
Christmas.
myself, I guess.
Jeremy
Yeah.
says currently multiple authorities are responding to reports of an active shooter at Joint Base
Oh God,
McGuire
really? Oh man,
in Dix
that's not
Lake,
good.
New Jersey. Base is
Holy
currently on full lockdown, as
smokes.
confirmed by an official.
Ouch.
Ugh.
Yeah, not good, man. Too many things are going on. Yeah, country's whole world's crazy right now.
Another is happening.
I think we're in the middle of World War III here.
There's this is when I was in high school. We used to go to the gym and put on the gloves. The principal was the ref. Could you imagine that?
There you go. Sounds like a cool principle.
Durso turned out pretty good. I was like, why can't
Yeah.
we do that?
Yeah, we need to do that.
But why can't we do that?
Can't do that
That's the
anymore.
problem.
Definitely a problem.
Durso said that a guy trying to push me around way back when. After our street fight, we were friends.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah,
happened.
sometimes.
But you became friends with the cleats guy or no?
Yeah, we worked it out, and then he kind of didn't treat me the way he was, and yeah, we worked it out. So I guess it
Settled
was
your
a good thing.
differences.
Exactly. Yeah, kind of moved on. Sometimes it works out that way, and it did. But
I had at least 2 instances playing college ball where somebody was, usually guys just left me alone because I didn't bother anybody. I just kept to myself.
yeah,
Whenever the guys are playing pranks on each other and stuff like that, I always stayed out of it because I didn't want anybody messing with me, so I didn't mess with anybody else.
yeah,
And there's always, somebody who didn't get it. They couldn't read it right.
right.
And I remember one guy said something, and I just turned around, said something in the parking lot, and I just turned around and I said, "Hey, man, you want to go?" And he was like, "What?" And I was like, "You talking? You want to go?"
Like for
And
real,
he's like,
huh?
"No, I
No,
don't."
I don't want to go, man. I want to stay
and we
right here.
became really good friends after,
Mhm.
like down the road. I don't think we immediately became friends, but he ended up being one of my really good friends. He was at my wedding and stuff.
Oh, that's cool. That's good.
And he's really good dude, and he always would retell that story to other people. And he's like, "Want to go?" I'm like, "No, I'm sorry, I don't want to go."
I don't want to go, man. I want to stay right here.
And then there's this other guy who had transferred into the school, and he's just like real wise Northern California guy,
Mm-hmm.
and always busting chops and being smart with people. And said something to me. Did something to me. We're in a casino watching the fights, and it was real loud and it's crowded and everything. And he's like saying something from across the table, and I can't quite hear him. And so when we got outside in the parking lot, a bunch of us were out there, and I was like, "Hey, man, I couldn't hear you in there. And now it's a little more quiet. You want to tell me what you had to say?"
There you go.
And he was like, "Oh no, I wasn't saying anything." I was like, "I'm pretty sure you're saying something. Like,
Saying
just tell me right now." He's like, "No, we're good, man. We're teammates." And it's like, "All right, I believe you. We're cool." And we ended up hanging out and stuff. Ended up being a nice guy.
Yeah, sometimes people will test you out. They'll push you, see what you do, and you're only going to get their respect when you.
We
stick
perhaps
up
should have fought.
for
Maybe
them.
that would have made it better. Our bond would have become stronger. I shouldn't have asked. I should have. No,
You know
it's
where
always
he is?
important. You don't want to fight somebody who doesn't want to fight.
Let's get him in the ring if you know where he is. We'll do it for the children.
It's long before I was an old man.
Mm,
But yeah, maybe that's a good idea. Maybe we set something like that up.
sure, we should. We can go down to the Rock, the like that guest we had on there from
Oh
Kensington.
yeah, buddy. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm sure we could go down there.
go down there, buddy.
We'll do it for Kensington.
That would be great. We'll set up the Mike G in the morning card.
There we go.
Everybody have to show up. I wouldn't want to bring people. I hate to say it, but I would feel horrible if people came to Kensington and something happened to them. Oh, I'm serious.
Yeah, I
I'm
got you.
serious. People
I
come
think in
to
a lot of
watch
ways
it.
it's relatively safe. I think a lot of the crime down there is for a reason, but you never know. There's random acts of violence. So
It's interesting. We were talking about that in some of the organized crime from back in the day. You and I were talking about that recently, and in reality, it's not like innocent people were being killed in those situations, right?
generally not. I mean,
Generally
sometimes
not.
people get caught up in the crossfire, so it happens.
Right,
But
yeah.
statistically speaking, usually there's a reason somebody's doing that to you or you're involved in it. Yeah, and I feel that way too. Even in Philadelphia, there's a little more random violence now than there probably ever has been, but majority of it is drug dealers and drug dealers, or somebody's trying to buy dope and something goes bad, or people stealing from each other out on the street, whatever the case may be.
I want to see from our Mike G in the Morning family, if we put on Mike G in the Morning fight card, would you A, attend, or B, participate? Throw it in the comments. Would you attend or participate? Who wants to attend or participate for charity? Of course, it would all be for charity. I think the Finisland said that he would fight you, Philly Chris.
Hey, let's do it, man. Let's do it.
That'd be great.
I think we fought one time. He probably doesn't remember.
Is that we'd probably have to have weight classes though, right? In order for it to
that's
be above board.
Probably a good idea.
You're much taller than him.
Yeah.
You guys not in the same weight class, probably, right?
Luckily, that's right. Yeah, might be in the same weight class. Got a few inches of height on him though. Yeah.
So, are you under 265?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm about 240 right now.
And is the Finisland over 205 but under 265?
I think so. Yes. Yeah. I think he's still lighter than me, but
But he's over 205.
I would say yes to that. I don't know the exact number, but I'm going to say very close to my weight, probably.
Miller says my brains are scrambled enough, but I would attend.
Get Jeremy in there as a ref or something. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So there is interest. Let's see who else would be on the card. Okay. Scott said here to 10, no one is a match for my metal hips.
That's pretty good.
Dursa says I'm past my prime for participating, but I would try to attend. So there's interest. We
Yeah,
do a Mike G in the Morning fight card.
At least we have an audience. Yeah,
we're gonna start to match it up.
Right.
Maybe we get Dom to fight on the card.
Oh, that'd be good. Get Dom out there.
Navit says I'm in my 60s. My opponent would fall down from laughter.
That's pretty good.
What if we get you an opponent who's in his 70s, Dag Navit?
There we go. There we go.
Oh, DG says, who am I fighting? Ready to roll. Mindy says, what are the rules?
All right.
We got the ladies.
There we go.
Ready to rock and roll.
DG and Mindy are ready to go with each other.
This is wonderful.
That's good stuff.
We got to find two like totally rabidly anti-gun leftist woke women for DG and Mindy to fight. What do you think?
Yeah, I like that idea. Too funny.
That would be great. We'll have Liberty go on TikTok for a couple hours and find a couple opponents for Mindy and DG.
Maybe we can get some people from that wrestling show we were watching.
Rita says I would participate because I can't drive right now.
All right. Sounds good.
Participate means you're going to fight, Rita.
Yeah, you gotta fight.
I think Rita misunderstood the question.
You got to hold her to it. Maybe she didn't, though. Maybe she didn't.
She can't drive, so she'll participate because we're going to send drivers for all the participants. That's what she meant.
Right.
We'll send somebody to pick you up at your house if you're going to participate. The Finisland says yes over 205. So we have a match. Philly Chris and the Finis.
There we go. With the fire plug. Hey now.
Scott says rules. There's no. It's got to be rules, Scott. We're not barbarians here.
No gouging of the eyes.
There's got to be rules.
Mm.
The rules are to be determined.
We'll figure it out. We'll make it work.
Liberty says that she's going to be a coach for whoever participates.
Hey, all right.
Liberty was a competitive boxer. There is a video floating around on YouTube of Liberty working the speed bag.
Yeah, we got to show that sometime if she's okay with it.
Yeah. You got a hold of that.
Yeah.
Scott says, if you get two woke women to fight, I'll end it. Oh, no. DG says she's in. How great would that be if we had a Mike G in the Morning fight card?
Hey now, DJ. Hey now.
Oh, no. The Finisland says he'll fight DG too. I don't think that's
there we go.
The Finis is like Andy Kaufman. Remember that?
Yeah.
Andy Kaufman fought the lady wrestlers.
That's right. That's pretty good.
And then he fought Jerry the King Lawler and complained that he broke his neck.
Yeah. Too funny.
This is great.
Good stuff.
You know who we need to get involved? Len
Mm,
needs to get involved. Maybe he'll participate or fight.
that'd be good. That would be good.
Liberty
Definitely would be
is
good.
actually, I forgot about this. Liberty's a certified cut man, believe it or not.
Oh yeah, she knows how to fix the cuts. Yeah,
A
that's good.
certified cut man. Had to take a class and get a
kidding.
certificate and everything like that about
Right.
how to pack them up.
Need to keep her around.
Mindy says, "Will this be in the Coliseum like Musk Zuckerberg fight?"
Mm. Is that still going on?
I heard
Yeah,
that they didn't. That it's kind of looks like it's fallen through. Unfortunately,
That's too bad. I wanted to see that.
if it wasn't at the Coliseum, I don't think I'd be going out to the Coliseum to see it. But if it was going to be stateside, I was really going to try to see that one
Yeah.
because they would stack the card underneath. You know that it wouldn't just be that
Oh,
fight.
yeah.
They'd have a lot of great fights underneath it.
Like a 4-hour ordeal, pay-per-view.
Were you here for the fights this weekend? Yeah, you were here when the fights were right.
That's right. Yeah, they went kind of quick, didn't they?
They did. Every fight except one ended in the first round on the main
Yeah, I
card.
remember that. Yeah.
One fight went to decision, which was great fight.
Mhm.
But every other fight ended in the first round. You know what's funny is that Dom called me after. He said I predicted that main event correctly on the show, which he did.
Oh yeah.
Islam Makhachev won the fight,
Mm.
and I wanted to put together some kind of video with Dom making the prediction and then Islam kicking Volkanovski in the head and knocking him out.
Good.
Do that. Oh, DG's game apparently says Defense Land, I'll kick your butt.
There we go. Now we're talking.
And this is a good topic. People seem to be ready to either participate or attend in the Mike G in the Morning Fight Club.
I like it.
The fight fan. Anybody else you could think of? Any guests or anything like that who would be good for the Mike G in the Morning Fight card? We have to start sending out invitations, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, Mindy's got training staff in order. I have a 16 and 20-year-old who have jiu-jitsu, kung fu, and karate.
There we go.
So that's conducive to a mixed martial arts competition.
Yeah, we'll have to have
maybe maybe some attorneys. Justin McShane, Attorney Roberts.
McShane would do it. Roberts is Golden Gloves boxer. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that or if he tells people.
Retirement.
He was a Golden Gloves boxer.
Minnie
says ask Six Smith. Six Smith the fighter.
Too funny.
Be great.
Is this going to be boxing or MMA type?
I guess we could have a mix of both on the card depending on what people want to do, right?
Yeah, just have certain types of bouts. Yeah, that'd be good.
DG says, I used to watch the fights as a kid. Larry Holmes was from Easton, PA.
Then we're going to have
what's funny is before I moved to
freestyle.
Pennsylvania, and I knew wanted to move here, I was still in law school. I was in town visiting my parents, and there was an attorney named Phil Hoff, who is in the Lehigh Valley. You've probably seen his billboards if you live in the Lehigh Valley on 22. He's a prominent personal injury lawyer. He went to Tulsa Law, so I somehow linked up with him. One of my professors knew him and set us up, so I went to have lunch with him. And while we're having lunch, he's like, hey, do you like boxing at all? Yeah, I'm addicted to combat sports. Why? It's like, well, Larry Holmes is a friend of mine. He's like, you want to meet him? It's like, you kidding? So he calls up Larry Holmes. He's like, hey, it's Phil. I got this kid I'm hanging out with. He wants to meet you. Can we come by? And I was like, yeah, come on by. So we went over, met Larry at his office, shook his hand. The guy's hands, I do not have small hands, Philly Chris.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt like I was shaking a baseball glove for a hand.
Really?
On Larry Holmes.
You got big feet too.
His hands are huge.
That's funny. Yeah, some of those boxers, they got mitts on them. Yeah.
Scott says Rich Roberts versus Mama Rita Bear.
There we go.
I got my I don't want them to fight. I like them both too much.
I think we should do Philly Chris freestyle because I've seen him doing like this weird like helicopter move when I hang out with him.
my ninja moves.
Yeah.
The finish line is telling my secrets over there. Hey now.
Minnie says everybody's gonna sign up for Law Shield beforehand.
Yeah,
in case
good
any of us
idea.
get charged.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's the
Maybe
truth.
we could give out a Law Shield membership as a prize or something.
They're gonna get a bunch of calls that night.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it appears we have not solved the world's problems this evening.
Once again, we have failed miserably.
We have failed at solving the world's problems.
Yeah. We'll keep working on it, though.
But we have had a heck of a good time, in my opinion.
Certainly have, as always.
If anybody's got any other ideas regarding the Mike G in the Morning fight card, let us know. We'll get that going.
Email us at MikeGinthemorning.com. Also, like and subscribe if you haven't done so already.
I'm trying to think, what would be the great fight? What would be the great fight to have? Who are two people we want to see fight?
I really want to see you and Russ go at it, but I don't know. We got to get him in.
Because Russ and I have a history, right?
Yeah, exactly. That could be the final match. Like, that could be the headliner, you know?
You have to waive the weight class. I don't mind because he's got the advantage, you know?
Yeah.
How much do you think he weighs? Didn't we do the
400.
guess? No, we did the guess Russell's weight, remember?
He's got to be over 300, I think, although he was on that pizza
No,
diet.
he was over 300.
Right.
And he lost a ton of weight.
Maybe 280?
No, he lost a lot more than that. He lost a lot more than that.
All right, we got to find out. I could try calling him.
It's probably, I mean, it's got to be in the comments of the episode somewhere.
Yeah. He probably put it back on, though. I hate to say it, but probably put it back on.
The Finis has the greatest comment of all time here. I will offer a grand prize to the big winner. It will be a beautiful red Miata convertible. You bring your own tow truck.
No, you can't do that. Not doing that. Not doing that.
Yeah, so Russ would have the advantage.
Yeah.
I would get. Yeah. I'm trying to think who else would make a good matchup, though.
Who else could we get?
Sitchko?
Manny McMahon?
Sitchko.
Yeah.
Get Sitchko to fight. That would be great.
Sitchko versus Roberts. Manny McMahon versus Russ.
There we go.
They're also different weight classes, though.
Well, first you got to line up the weight classes and decide.
Brett Regal's a fighter.
There we go.
He's a big dude, though.
We need like opposing counsels, though. It's more fun that way.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. All the criminal defense attorneys fighting each other is not that much fun.
Right.
You have to get some prosecutors.
There
we go. Now we're talking.
Defense attorneys versus prosecutors.
That would be funny.
Oh, judges. Imagine if judges would do it.
Now we're talking.
You get a judge who gave you really bad ruling one time.
A judge versus Hannity.
Take that, Your Honor.
I wonder if there's any problem with that. Like, would you get in trouble for asking the judge to participate? And hey, judge, I would like to fight you.
Just don't do it in the courtroom.
In an organized combat setting. Would you be willing to participate for charity?
I think you could put, like, we can make a flyer and kind of hand it to people that we would want to do it and let them come to us.
Oh, now accepting participants.
And we got to audition them and stuff.
What do they got to audition? Do they got to cut promo like professional wrestling?
Yeah, we got to know their backstory. We got to know what their talent is. You know, what kind of fight history they got.
Right.
What's their beef. This could solve society. It could be to get out some of that inner violence and inner hate we got going on. Let it out.
Be a solution.
Yeah.
Never know.
People need an outlet.
That's right. Release valve.
Yeah. Well, let's get it going.
Let's do it.
Anything else for the good of the order?
I'm good. Thank you. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Definis Land says, "Can we use bag of bees? Bag of bees
course.
is strictly prohibited."
It's only self-defense.
No, because if you bring in bag of bees, then somebody's going to bring in a cobra in a can.
Yeah,
and
then
it's real ugly.
all hell's gonna break loose.
It's going to get very ugly.
Hmm.
Scott says Mike G versus Governor Murphy.
Oh, I'd like to see that. I want to fight him.
Anti-gun politician.
That
I
made me
don't know
think
if I
of-
told you this, but I was at, there is this platform where they have boxing and it's televised, not televised, but it's streamed and it's it's pretty popular. I'm not going to say
Yeah.
who it was, but I was asked to participate against a liberal talk show host.
Oh yeah, no kidding. Nice.
And I thought that would have been a lot of fun. I started to make arrangements for training and everything like that before I really did too much research into it. And then somebody sent me over a clip of, because I had not watched it personally. I had, they just presented it to me and heard that it was pretty popular. And then somebody sent me a clip of it, and they had like half naked women in the ring, and they had like fights that were like little people fights and stuff, and I was like, I don't want to be a part of this kind of a spectacle.
Yeah,
Mindy says, which talk show host? I don't even know. The offer was just, would you do a
throw it out there.
competitive boxing match with a liberal talk show host? And my response was basically, it sounds like a really good idea. Probably yes.
Yes.
But then once I found more information about the production itself, I really couldn't.
Questionable.
I didn't feel comfortable associating with that and promoting that kind of a thing. It's interesting because when I respectfully declined, I told myself in the back of my head, well, not this one, but this is a good excuse to make sure that I do get, some kind of competitive contest in the future. And I have not been presented the occasion so far. So we're going to make our own occasion.
That's right. We'll set it up ourselves.
Mindy says, so it was like a carnival. Yeah, basically, yes. It was more of a carnival than a sporting event.
It was TikTok.
No, I mean, it's a boxing production. They do this very frequently. They're popular. They get a lot of views. Run by a pretty prominent company. But it was just not exactly
gain the whole world and lose your soul.
What I want, right? I don't want to promote that kind of stuff.
Yeah, gotcha.
Doesn't align with my values. We'll just leave it.
We can do the Christian Howard Stern one.
There you
go. There you go. Perfect. Did they ever have fights on Howard Stern?
I think they did. I think they had some stuff like that, if I remember correctly.
I think Philly Chris versus Chris Christie.
Let's do it.
Oh, that would be great.
I'll take him to the beach.
That would be great.
Go to the beach.
The View. DG's got to fight someone from the DG versus Whoopi Goldberg. What do you think?
Nice.
Or I guess anybody on The View.
Yeah,
I came up with a name, but I
realized a tag team match. Mindy and DG versus any of the two ones on The View. Liberty, you got a name?
No, what? It kind of came to my head. It was like a Ralph name, so I
Nice.
Oh, it's curse word?
Yeah, curse word.
Oh.
It just came to my head. It was a Jersey thing.
Mindy says, I'll take on Joy.
DJ versus Whoopi Whoop. Never mind.
What? You can say whoop ass. That's not Ralph, right?
Yeah,
that
it's okay. I don't know. It's just like DG versus DG whoops ass Goldberg.
Yeah. I think that's fine. I think you could say that.
I don't know. I don't know what you can and can't say anymore.
I remember somebody in school, or maybe it was baseball camp, got in trouble when we were kids for saying ass. And he said, what? It's a part of the body. I thought that was a pretty logical response. No?
Hey, it's a part of the body.
All right. Good deal. We will call it a night. Thank you, everybody, for being here and participating. What's that?
Russ is actually doing something productive for the show out there tonight. So he's making
see
things
about
better
that.
for WFYL.
It's not done
Chris
yet.
says we'll see about that. Probably not.
Yeah, not done yet.
Probably not.
Probably
Oh
not.
no. To finish him. They're really going at it here to use his defeated gal
Ah,
to
too
finish
funny.
old man. That's all time we got for today. Stick around for We the People, the Constitution Matters. Pastor David Whitney, Professor Phil Duffy. We miss you, Ellie. Daddy loves you.